My parents and my sister sent me to the back at the wedding because I don't have a partner, but when I left, I took the photographer with me, because he's my boyfriend. Recently, I found out that my younger sister, Indira, was getting married. The thing is, she didn't even bother to invite me. For months, she had been sending wedding invitations to everyone else in the family, and yet, mine never came. I actually found out about the wedding when one of our other siblings casually mentioned it in conversation. Later, they tried to smooth things over, saying that she would invite me eventually or something like that, but it was obvious that Indira had left me out on purpose. It wasn't an oversight or a late invitation, she deliberately excluded me. What made it sting even more was that it's not like Indira and I had been distant or estranged. We still saw each other now and then, and while we'd had our share of normal sibling arguments, there had never been any deep resentment or long-lasting fights between us, just the usual small disagreements that come with growing up together. So I decided to confront her and ask what was going on. She hesitated, then confessed that she and her partner were having a small, intimate wedding and that she only wanted to invite people who would be coming with a date. Since I'm single, she felt that showing up alone would not look good at her wedding. I know that sounds ridiculous, a wedding just for people with partners, but let me give you some context. I'm the oldest of 5 siblings, and I'm also the only one who isn't settled down yet. Apparently, that fact alone has turned into a sort of mark against me. Growing up with 4 younger siblings was never easy, especially because we didn't come from a wealthy family, yet my parents decided to reproduce like rabbits. They always expected me to step up, to help, to act like a second mother in many ways. It was as if being the eldest automatically meant carrying more weight than anyone else, just because I was born first. While my siblings got to be kids, I was often the one taking care of them. I wouldn't say I hated my childhood, but the way things were set up definitely left me with a strong aversion to the idea of having children of my own. While most of my friends went out, partied, hung out, or simply lived like teenagers, I was usually stuck at home. My role wasn't about fun or freedom, it was about responsibility. I was the one who made sure my siblings were taken care of, helped them with their homework, and basically played 1/3 mother rather than being another kid in the house. Nothing I had ever truly felt like it belonged to me. Whatever my parents gave me, clothes, snacks, or even small gifts, I was expected to share it with my sisters. If I didn't want to share, it became this huge drama. They'd complain, cry, and sometimes even try to steal my things when I wasn't looking. When I got older and started working, I could finally buy small things for myself, makeup, accessories, or personal items. I kept them locked in a drawer, trying to protect a little corner of privacy. But even then, my sisters somehow managed to sneak in and use my stuff without permission, as if my boundaries didn't matter. Complaining to my parents never got me anywhere. Every time I tried to tell them how unfair it felt that my things were taken, or that I always had to shoulder extra responsibility, they brushed it off. To them, that was just what being the eldest sister meant. They reminded me that we were family, and in their eyes, being the oldest meant I had to have infinite patience, to give without limit, and to always be the most mature one. But living like that day after day was exhausting. It wore me down until the house stopped feeling like a safe or comfortable place. It felt like a constant drain. So when it came time to apply for college, I made a decision I knew would shake things up. I chose a school as far away from home as possible. I didn't care that it meant long travel or being on my own. All I cared about was putting distance between myself and the chaos I had grown up in. Of course, my family didn't see it that way. To them, my choice was a betrayal. They accused me of stabbing the family in the back, of abandoning the people who needed me most. My sisters, especially, reacted with tears and tantrums, insisting that I was leaving them behind when they still wanted me close. But by then, I had reached my breaking point. My mental health was in such a bad place that I didn't care about their guilt trips or emotional meltdowns. I was drowning at home, leaving was the only way I could finally breathe. So I packed my bags, left, and chose myself for the first time in my life. More than education, what I was truly chasing was freedom, freedom from the constant weight of responsibility, and a chance to finally find some peace of mind. Over the years, my family slowly began to accept that I had chosen my own path. At first, there was tension, but gradually things eased. Once I got a stable job and became financially independent, I could visit more often, which helped rebuild some of the closeness we had lost. Now, I see my siblings regularly, usually every few weeks, and we spend quality time together. I make sure to be there for the big moments in their lives. I've been there for every Christmas, Thanksgiving, and New Year's. I've celebrated their milestones, stood by them during pregnancies, and even been one of the first to hold their newborns. Despite the rocky foundation of our younger years, my nieces and nephews adore me, maybe because I give great gifts. I love spoiling them with things their parents might not think to buy. It's my way of giving them joy, and in return, their faces light up when they see me. Even with my parents, despite all the frustrations of growing up the way I did, I never stopped supporting them. When it came time for them to buy their house, I stepped up and contributed some of my savings so they wouldn't have to take on a big mortgage. Of all the siblings, I was the only one who did that. It wasn't about recognition or proving anything, it was about making sure my parents could finally have stability and peace. And yet, despite everything I've done for my family, all the holidays I've attended, the support I've given, the sacrifices I've made, they still find ways to remind me of what they see as my greatest flaw. Almost every conversation eventually circles back to the same point, that I'm still a single woman, and that I need to have a man in my life. Whether they say it with concern or with mockery, the message is always the same: in their eyes, I am incomplete without a husband. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not that I dislike men. In fact, I've been lucky enough to experience love with good men who respected me and understood who I am. But marriage, kids, and that settled-down kind of life were never something I wanted for myself. Not because I couldn't have it, but because, deep down, it's simply not who I am. I've been in beautiful, fulfilling relationships with mature adults who were on the same page as me, people who respected my boundaries and never pressured me to become someone I'm not. Still, no matter how many times I explain it, my family just doesn't seem to understand. They cling tightly to their traditional values, to the belief that life must follow a certain path: school, marriage, children. And because I've chosen not to walk that path, they treat me as if I'm rebelling against them. They never stop to consider that maybe, just maybe, I know myself better than they do. That my happiness might simply look different from theirs. At first, I used to argue. I would defend my choices, try to explain that my life has worth and meaning outside of marriage and motherhood. But after years of the same fight, I got tired. These days, I almost feel numb to the topic. Instead of wasting energy on the same outdated argument, I just do my best to avoid it altogether. It's easier that way, even if it means swallowing some pain and hiding parts of myself whenever I'm around them. So when Indira finally admitted the reason she hadn't invited me to her wedding, that because I didn't have a date, showing up alone would somehow look bad, it felt like the whole world collapsed around me. It wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was about everything that moment represented. I couldn't believe that my own sister, the one I had given so much of myself to, thought I wasn't good enough to stand beside her on the most important day of her life. I told Indira directly that I was deeply disappointed in her. I said that if that was truly how she felt about me, then fine, I wouldn't come to her wedding. But I also wouldn't continue being part of her life. The words came out heavy, and I meant for them to. Because to me, this wasn't just about an invitation, it was about respect, about love, and about everything I had given her as her older sister. Instead of trying to understand where I was coming from, Indira brushed it off. She started arguing that I was being too dramatic, that it was just a wedding, and that my absence wasn't a big deal. After that, we stopped talking, there was no point in arguing anymore. But ever since that call, my phone hasn't stopped buzzing. My mom and the rest of my siblings have been reaching out, each trying to give me their reasons why Indira's decision wasn't so bad. Out of all of them, only one of my younger brothers has taken my side. He can see how unfair this whole situation is. But the rest? They've all chosen to side with Indira, echoing her words. insisting that me showing up without a date would be a waste. As if my worth depended on whether I had a man on my arm. My mother, especially, has been the most persistent. She keeps saying that if I would just agree to bring a date, then maybe she could convince Indira to include me in the wedding. She honestly believes that being a woman means following a certain script. And that, apparently, having a man beside me is my ticket to be allowed at her daughter's wedding. I told her not to bother, that I had no interest in begging for an invitation. Or playing along with rules that strip away my dignity. If my own family can't see my worth beyond whether or not I have a partner, then what's the point of showing up at all? Update 1. Thank you all so much for the comments and messages on my original post. Even though I don't have a partner, I do like to think I'm a pretty grateful person. Despite what my parents believe, that I'm somehow defective for not having a man. I think I manage quite well in this world, thank you very much. To update and answer a few common questions I've been getting. Question: do you and Indira have a history of fights or big fallouts? No, that's the thing. Apart from the normal disagreements sisters have growing up, Indira and I never had any huge arguments. In fact, I always thought we were quite close. I helped raise her, after all. That's why her decision not to invite me hurt so much. Of all the siblings, I truly believed she and I were the closest. Question: did you ask Indira directly if it was really because you're single? Yes, I did. She hesitated at first, but she eventually admitted it. She said her wedding would be small and intimate and that she only wanted people who'd come with a date. She also said she doesn't share my lifestyle choices, that she doesn't want that kind of energy at her wedding. Question: why not just take a friend as your +1 and go? Well, to clarify, I actually do have a boyfriend right now. My family just doesn't know about him yet because I prefer to keep my love life private. Whenever I mention dating someone, my parents immediately start pushing me to get married. So I stopped sharing those details altogether. I'm not some bitter, lonely spinster sitting at home with nothing better to do. The way my family sometimes makes me sound. I go out, I date, I enjoy my life. I've never had trouble attracting men or being in relationships. I've just chosen not to follow the traditional route of marriage and kids. Whenever I've dated someone who wanted that path, I've simply ended things and we've both moved on, no anger, no resentment. But the idea of taking a friend as my date? That would have been a huge blow to my parents' pride. Update 2. So this week, Indira called me. At first, she started with an apology, but honestly, it didn't sound sincere at all. I mean, she barely got the words "I'm sorry" out before following them up with a request. And I don't know about you, but no genuine apology starts like that. At least wait a few days before asking for something so it's less obvious. It didn't take me long to realize that her apology wasn't really about fixing our relationship, it was about what she might lose. See, after I told her I was cutting her off completely, she must have realized she wouldn't be getting any more of the expensive gifts I'd always given her and her kids. And just like that, she seemed to have a sudden change of heart. She said she'd been thinking it over, that she talked it through with her fiancé. And that now they would love for me to come to the wedding. I told her directly that it didn't make sense. Days had gone by where she and her fiancé were perfectly comfortable leaving me out. And now, out of nowhere, they'd changed their minds? It felt less like reconciliation and more like convenience. Like she suddenly realized what she stood to lose and decided to reel me back in. Indira tried to defend herself, saying she'd just been too busy with the wedding preparations to really think things through. She insisted it wasn't out of malice, just stress and distraction. Then she added that after our last conversation, she realized it was unnecessarily mean to exclude me. And that she really wanted me there now. I simply told her I'd think about it. You'd think the conversation would have ended there, right? But no. Indira still had more entitlement left in the tank. Apparently, after everything she'd done, she thought I owed her a favor. After apologizing and asking me to reconsider attending. She suddenly switched gears and brought up something completely different. Turns out the wedding photographer she had originally hired had just been in an accident and could no longer do the job. With only 2 weeks left before the wedding, she was panicking. Every decent photographer in town was already booked. Then, almost casually, she asked if I knew anyone and if I could step in to help her find a replacement photographer. Oh, and she added that I could pay for this new wedding photographer and consider it my wedding gift. I had to bite my lip not to laugh. After telling me I wasn't good enough for her wedding because I didn't have a date. There she was, desperate, asking me to fix her biggest crisis. And if my sister sounds entitled, it's because she is. She only wanted me at her wedding if I could solve her problem. And of course she knew I could solve it, because through my work, I know several photographers. I told her that maybe I could help, but don't worry. I already had a plan in mind. I didn't promise her anything. I kept it vague. Immediately, she started thanking me over and over, as if everything between us had magically been fixed. She went on and on about how excited she was to see me at the wedding, how much it meant to her that I'd be there, and how happy she was that we were back on good terms. From the way she talked, you'd think none of the hurtful things she'd said had ever happened. What Indira doesn't know, and what no one in my family knows, is that the guy I've been dating happens to be a photographer. I met him through work. Now, he doesn't normally do weddings, that's not his line of photography. But I know that if I ask him for this favor, he'll say yes. He won't need to take professional wedding photos, just decent ones. That's all my sister really needs. So here's my plan. I'm going to ask my boyfriend if he's willing to act as the photographer for my sister's wedding. And then I'll take him with me. But here's the twist. If I notice that, at the wedding, my family, especially my sister, still treats me terribly, we're leaving. And yes, I know they will. But that will be my little dose of petty revenge for not inviting me in the first place. Sure, I could take the high road, stay away, and move on. But honestly, if they think they can use me and only treat me well when they need something, then I can have my own kind of fun too. Update 3. As you already know, I decided to attend my sister's wedding. I also asked my boyfriend if he'd be willing to step in as Indira's photographer. And to my surprise, he agreed. Even though weddings aren't really his thing, I think what convinced him was the plan. He knows exactly what I'm up to, and he finds it hilarious. Besides, if my family ends up treating me decently, then it'll just be a fun night, take some photos, eat, drink, and enjoy. He did say, however, that he has one rule. He likes to drink at weddings. So, if he's going to be working as the photographer, he warned me that he'll probably be drunker than a sailor who's just docked after 5 months at sea. I asked if that was an exaggeration, he couldn't answer me. I offered to pay his usual rate since I didn't want him working for free. But he told me not to worry about it. He'd make up for it by eating and drinking enough to get his money's worth. I called Indira and told her that her wedding photographer was officially secured. That I had managed to find someone reliable who was available on such short notice. Of course, I didn't mention the tiny detail of who it was. She was ecstatic. She kept thanking me again and again, saying how much stress I'd taken off her shoulders. As far as she's concerned, I just used my professional connections to track someone down and convince him to do it. She has no idea that the man who'll be capturing her big day is also my boyfriend. And honestly, I'm dying to see her face when she finds out. But I won't reveal it yet, not until the wedding itself. The plan is to arrive together since I was the one who found him, but without mentioning that we're a couple. I'll have to sell the act perfectly, otherwise, all this planning will have been for nothing. Then again, I could probably lick my boyfriend's face in front of my parents and siblings, and they'd still think there's nothing going on between us. Because in their minds, it's impossible for me to have a boyfriend. Call me petty, I won't deny it. But honestly, I love it. If this is what it takes to give them a taste of their own medicine, so be it. My parents and my sister are perfectly fine using me when it benefits them. So this time, I'm doing the same. Except, in my version, I get to have a little fun while doing it. You. Update 4. It's been a month since my last update, and a lot has happened since then. I didn't post sooner because, well, you'll see why. First things first, Indira's wedding was honestly a bit of a disaster. When my boyfriend and I arrived at the venue, he immediately got to work, setting up and preparing to take photos. I figured Indira would at least thank me for finding her a photographer. But since she'd already gotten what she wanted, she didn't need to keep pretending to be nice. When I went to look for my seat, it wasn't there. Indira and her fiancé had hired an event planner, so every seat was carefully assigned. I scanned the rows, expecting to find a place card with my name, but there was nothing. No name tag. No reserved spot. Nothing. I glanced around and saw my family sitting together in the front rows, laughing and chatting. Completely carefree, apparently not noticing, or not caring, that I didn't have a seat. I went up to my mom, hoping she could make room for me. She leaned over and whispered that my seat had been placed way in the back. Because, according to Indira, that's where I belonged. I asked if they thought it was okay for me to be seated apart from everyone else. But my parents and siblings just brushed it off, telling me not to make a scene about the seating arrangements. That I should feel lucky to even have been invited to the wedding in the first place. All my siblings and parents were sitting up front with their partners, laughing and having a great time, while I was shoved into a corner with a bunch of obligation guests. You know, the ones people invite out of courtesy. So, I went to find my boyfriend to put our little plan into motion. But he had his own story to tell me. Apparently, Indira had gone up to him with a bunch of new demands that went way beyond what they had originally agreed on. In addition to the standard wedding photos and videos, she now wanted him to record individual videos of her and her bridesmaids. Something that had never been discussed or approved. When he politely pointed out that this was not part of the agreement, she yelled at him, saying it was her wedding day and that he shouldn't ruin it. He turned to me and said, "Now I get what you meant when you said your sister's entitled." When we finally found Indira, I told her I was leaving. She barely even looked at me, just said, "That's fine," without glancing up. But then I added, "Oh, by the way, I'm taking the photographer with me." That got her attention. She turned around, eyes wide, frozen in disbelief. Until her face went pale and her eyes bulged like two fried eggs. When she realized who the photographer actually was. My boyfriend was already holding his camera, showing her as he deleted every single photo he'd taken so far. I stammered a little, not quite believing what was happening. But by the time her brain probably caught up to the situation, we were already gone. Honestly, I have no idea how the rest of the wedding turned out. What I do know is that Indira and my parents called me multiple times and sent countless messages demanding to know where the wedding photographer and I had gone. I didn't answer. I just blocked their numbers. In the days after the wedding, a few of my other siblings tried to contact me, mostly to yell at me for leaving the wedding and for taking the photographer with me. They know he's my boyfriend, but to them, he's the photographer. Because that's the only way they see people, by their usefulness. So yes, I've cut off my family almost entirely. The only one I still talk to is my youngest brother, who's been on my side through all this. He hasn't criticized me once, he just said Indira deserved it. As for my boyfriend, I did feel bad because he'd been looking forward to taking full advantage of the food and open bar. So, as compensation, I took him out to dinner that same night. At his favorite restaurant. He said it didn't quite hit the same as eating the food meant for entitled people. But it still wasn't bad at all. Update 5. It's been 7 months since my last update, and a lot has changed in my life. The biggest news? My boyfriend proposed, and we're getting married. I know, I always said I didn't want marriage, but with my fiancé, it just felt right. When the right person shows up, everything feels different, so I said yes. And yes, we'll have a photographer, one of his friends, who will also be a guest. As for my family? They're not invited. The only exception will be my youngest brother. No plus ones or couples allowed at my wedding. Since apparently, I can make up ridiculous rules too. Technically, Indira isn't even in a relationship right now. She's still legally married but recently separated. So even if I did invite her, I doubt she'd bring anyone. According to my younger brother, her ex-husband had no idea about all the things she did to me at the wedding. Like not inviting me at first or seating me in the back. You know how men are, they rarely get involved in the planning. They just show up that day to say I do. Some of them probably at metaphorical gunpoint, kidding, of course. Anyway, my brother says there were other issues between them. So their breakup probably wasn't just because of what happened that day. He only saw bits and pieces of their fights during the wedding. And he's not in close contact with Indira anymore. As for my parents, that's been interesting. After I ruined the wedding, their words. Because I took the photographer with me. They called me and said a lot of very unpleasant things. I only picked up because it was from an unfamiliar number. They're still blocked everywhere else. They told me they regretted ever accepting my help. Referring, of course, to the photographer, conveniently forgetting that I once helped raise their children. And even gave them part of my savings so they could buy their house. So I replied, funny you mention that. Because maybe you should return that money I lent you. They tried to play dumb, pretending they didn't know what I was talking about. But I told them I had plenty of messages from them. Thanking me and calling that money a loan. Promising to pay me back. They denied it, saying it was a gift. But their messages clearly said otherwise. They were too proud to accept help back then. But apparently not proud enough to ever pay it back. And well, a judge isn't as sentimental. So if I had proof it was a loan, they'd be forced to repay. Since their texts made it sound exactly like that. They ended up taking out a mortgage to pay me back in full. And with that, my ties to them are officially done. I can't get back all the years I spent being their unpaid babysitter and second mom, but at least I got something. I don't think I'll make many more updates after this. But since some of you asked, yes, my parents did call. After hearing about my engagement. Maybe it reopened some old wound, who knows. I promise I'll update again after the wedding. Though we're planning a long engagement, maybe a year or more. So don't expect news from me anytime soon. Update 6. This isn't a big update, just to close things off. The most important thing, I'm married now. My husband made up for lost time by eating and drinking. As much as he'd wanted to at Indira's wedding. Though he joked it just didn't taste the same. Since it wasn't entitled people food. The ceremony was quiet and simple, no drama, no chaos. My parents and siblings didn't demand an invitation. And of course, they didn't get one. We don't plan on having children. That's something we both agreed on. So, there won't be an I'm going to be a mom update years from now. Let's just say, we've taken the necessary precautions to make sure that never happens. And with that, this really is the last update.